One of the most impressive things you can do in a live set is to seamlessly blend between an old classic track with a live drummer and a full electronic piece of music. This also happens to be one of the most difficult things to pull off. In today's episode, I'd like to show you how to mix in and out of a classic Led Zeppelin track using some smart preparation techniques. Even though I'm going to show you how to do this in Traktor Pro, you can apply these techniques to just about any software out there. Let's jump straight in and show you another advanced mixing technique. Okay guys, so we want to find a mix in point and a mix out point. That's the only way to make these songs work. We can't stretch the whole song to fit a grid, but we can find two parts of the song where the drummer is hopefully in time enough to get a good loop. So that's what we're looking for, two solid loops. My first loop is here at this part. So the first thing I'll do is set a grid here. Now what this is going to do is stretch a grid across the track from this point onwards based on the tempo. So what we want to do is scroll through, find our mix in point and our mix out point. And you can see that this grid is a little bit off. So what we're going to do is just adjust that grid until it lines up. So this one section right here based on these visual lines is as accurate as possible. We'll go back to the 1, set a 4 count loop, and listen to how it sounds. Sounds pretty good. The way to really test that though is to go up here in the master clock section. Set your master clock to internal, turn on click, sync up your track, and compare how well the loop stays in time with the beat. Now, if the loop does not go out of time, you know that you have a pretty solid loop. If it starts to float out of time, you need to adjust your loop in point, your loop out point, or your BPM, and find the loop until it's perfectly in sync. Now that we've got our intro set and we've got a loop, let's go ahead and store that so it's always stored with a track. I'm also going to set another cue point and make it a load marker, so this song always loads to that point. Now it's time to find our mix out point. Now, to make things easy for me and be a little bit sneaky, I dropped a loop for the same tempo at the downbeat of a vocal phrase. Something like that. So as long as I drop a beat over this section, it's going to sound pretty clean and I won't have to worry about rhythms and other things conflicting. It's a little bit sneaky, but usually you won't have that opportunity. So let's go further in the track and do the next step in the process for almost every song. Once again, we're going to look for a section where we can grab ideally 4 counts, maybe as much as 8, where the drummer's really, really tight. So I think this would make a pretty sweet loop right here. Starting with this down point, what I'm going to do is set another beat grid. Now this stretches a whole new beat grid across here. And one thing you'll notice is that these lines don't match up with the beat at all. That's because the band is now playing at a totally new tempo. Here's where we want to show you one important trick. The first loop that we set, this loop, was 86.75 beats per minute. So I'm going to put those into the comment section and say that loop, the intro loop, is 86.75 BPM. Now what we can do is actually adjust the BPM so we can figure out what the BPM of this next section is. Once again, we're trying to get these lines to line up right here with the beat. So we're going to go into grid and we're going to manually adjust the BPM until it lines up with. That looks pretty good. That's our mix out point there, and that line is lining up right with the rhythm. So as long as we're not off, this loop should be right about 95 beats per minute. Let's drop a loop and see how it sounds. Sounds pretty good to me, but to really be sure that your loops don't float off while you're in the mix, you want to check them against another consistent source. So to do that, we could go ahead and drop in a beat. We could use the tick over here or the internal tempo. I'm going to go in here real quick and load up a beat. Cool, so now I have a beat loaded up in the left deck, and I'm going to go ahead and sync that loop up to the beat and see if they stay in time. And this will tell me what's going to happen down the road if I try to mix it in. So that stayed pretty consistent. I could hear it floating just a little bit, which means I probably need to adjust the BPM of the loop and fine tune it until it's perfect. But always check your intro and your outro loops against a metronome or another deck that you know the BPM on, so you can confirm that your loop is super solid. Now, once you've got the loop of your choice, go ahead and store it. So all you have to do is activate it, and you have a nice mix out point. Final thing I'm going to do, just so all this stuff gets stored, is I'm going to lock this, and that's going to save all the cue points permanently with the MP3 and ensure that none of these get messed up as I move files around. So that's just one way that you can go ahead and prepare lots of different rock tunes or songs with live drummers to mix into your electronic sets. The more professional way would be to do a personal edit inside of Ableton or some other sequencer, and we're going to jump in and teach you how to do that in a few weeks on djtechtools.com.